And that's my goal. That's my goal with bringing forward this idea of transforming out loud. Where can you transform out loud this week? What could you share in your business, in your personal life? Where could you be more truthful about how you're feeling, about what you desire, about what's really true for you? And I just invite you to share once in one way that feels risky this week and see what happens, see what opens up for you. At worst, you see that you don't die by transforming out loud, by sharing what's going on for you. It's Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. I'm Darla LeDoux, best-selling author, coach, and retreat leader, and I'm on a mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. This show's dedicated to the coaches, consultants, healers, leaders, and light workers who are here to hold space for the truth that transforms lives and get paid for it. Expert retreat and business tips, strategies, stories, and magic. It's your weekly mini retreat delivered right to your ears. Let's do this. Hello and welcome to today's Retreat and Grow Rich podcast. This is Darla LeDoux, founder of Aligned Entrepreneurs and author of Retreat and Grow Rich, the book you can find on Amazon as well as the podcast. And I'm here with our final lesson or final episode of this season. We'll be back in the new year with the second season of Retreat and Grow Rich. Today's topic is transforming out loud. Transforming out loud. I want to talk about this topic a little bit because this is something that's really important to me personally and is important to my clients as retreat leaders. And so it's something that I look for in clients is this willingness to transform out loud. I want to talk about what that means and why it's so important, and kind of plant a seed for you to start to look for ways that you can do this in your own life and in your own world. And when we come back in January, for this season, I've been doing 2 guests and then a solo episode by me, and then 2 guests and a solo episode by me. And in the mix, and my guests are typically people who lead retreats or do services related to retreats. And in the new year, I'm going to add to that a series called Transforming Out Loud, where we get real about some of the things that happen in our lives that spark transformation. Spirit has interesting ways of working through us in order to have us get in deeper alignment and go to the next level in our leadership, in the message that we share, in our willingness to receive and live an amazing life. So why transform out loud? Why is this so important? So as I've whittled down my mission, it is to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. Normalize transformation on the planet, right? Which means that it's normal, not weird, when you change and grow. Transformation is a permanent shift in a behavior or a pattern, or really the energy from which we show up. And it's actually a shift in our context for life, right? When we can shift what matters to us, what we're focusing on, the energy we're bringing to something, we actually shift all the areas of our life without having to individually work on every area of our life, because this permanent shift in our energy field causes this ripple effect, right? So in episode 3, I talked about delivering transformation and what I call the anatomy of a transformation. And I walk through the 10 steps in a transformation cycle. And this is, I've been leading retreats now for 9 years. I've led 60 plus retreats. So I know a few things about transformation as I've watched my clients walk in looking one way and walk out looking different. And if you lead this kind of work, you know what I mean. We shift and we look different physically, visibly, because our energy field shifts. A lot of times things heal, right? Whether it's physical symptoms heal, or our money story heals, or our relationship heals because we do this inner work. And I've watched, the process people go through. And for me, the reason I am so clear and confident about the transformation available for someone when they work with me is because I really understand this process and how it works. So if you haven't listened to episode 3, you may want to go back and listen to that one. I want to share about the middle part of the anatomy of a transformation today, to bring forward why it is so important for us to be able to transform out loud. Now, transforming out loud simply means that we don't carry shame or judgment about the life circumstances that show up that are the spark for our transformation. For example, the transformation that had me be in business in the first place started with my divorce. And my divorce could be thought of as pretty dramatic. I married someone who quickly revealed to me that they were an addict, revealed by the actions they were taking. And it didn't last very long. My marriage, by all accounts, was a failure or a disaster. There's a lot of ways we could think of it. And for me, I think of it as a gift. Even though at the time it didn't feel that way. I felt like I had failed. I was so embarrassed. People still had our wedding postcard up and we were already in divorce court. Like, it didn't last very long. And yet that experience served me in so many ways in my own growth and transformation, because it really was a mirror for me to look at places where I was accepting things that weren't really in alignment for me, places where I was making decisions that weren't really in alignment for me, and also places where I could heal, right? There was a reason I had attracted the person I did based on my experience growing up, specifically with my dad and my relationship with him, and certain behavior patterns that he had that were replicated in my marriage, and certain beliefs that I had created about myself that in the process of moving through this marriage, I could see that they weren't true. And really specifically, my ex went to treatment, but it didn't stick. He just couldn't do whatever he needed to do to transform that wound. And what I got to see was that had nothing to do with me. Like, I actually could see there was this part of me that went, I'm not important enough for you to go through this transformation, right? And that was the old part of me, because that is exactly how I felt about my dad, right? I'm not important enough for you to do what it takes to be there for me. And I could have gone down that same path, but instead I chose to see that mirror. And I had been doing a lot of transformational work before I made this decision. That was a healing and growth decision. But I could see really clearly, like, whoa, not only does this not have to do with me, right? This is his journey, not mine. But I also could see that my dad's pattern had nothing to do with me. It wasn't personal. It wasn't that he didn't love me or I wasn't important enough. It was something else entirely. And I got to see that. So I got to not only heal the present experience, but I got to heal the past experience at the same time. Now, on the outside, and there are several other nuances in that situation that healed things from my past for me. On the outside, it might have looked like my life was falling apart, right? My marriage failed. By the way, my stepdad died at the same time, and I was really, really distraught. It was a really, really rough time for me. And so on the outside, it could really look like, poor you, your life is falling apart, right? Or another way we could look at when things like this happen in our life, whether it's disease or death or divorce or job loss or all kinds of different things, up in relationships or whatever can happen, that we look at this actually as, oh, wow, this is interesting. You must be being invited to grow. So if you can imagine that we lived in a world where if things weren't quite clicking, that instead of being judged like, oh, you poor thing, or, oh, you idiot, or, you must have really screwed that up. Instead, these things were seen as invitations for growth, and we were like supportive and excited and curious to see, oh, okay, things are shifting in your life. How might you grow with this? If we had that world, we wouldn't carry shame. And we wouldn't have so much to be healed from in the first place, right? So how do we get to that world? So part of it is the more layers we shed, the more we heal personally as leaders and step higher and higher in our own consciousness, the more we shift the consciousness on the planet, right? And we can model the way for that. The other way we can help to shift this is to transform out loud. In other words, rather than retreating and withdrawing and waiting until we're perfect to share our message, we can share anyway, and we can share the messy stuff. Now, I do this in many ways. There are so many ways where I'm really vulnerable, right? I show up and I share what's up for me. I share my perspective. My clients who work with me in my high-level program, the collective, the Beautifully Aligned Retreat Leader Collective, one of the things they appreciate is that I really share what I'm working on, and without holding back or waiting until I have all the perfect stats or anything like that. I share what I'm working on in my marketing, and I share what I'm working on internally. And one of the things I've noticed as I've committed to normalizing transformation on the planet and really distinguished that one of the distinctions of this type of leader is being willing to transform out loud, I have had lots of things show up in my life that I went, ooh, yeah, but maybe not that, right? Yeah, I can share, but maybe I don't share that. So I'm opening up a container for me to share some of those things and to really practice sharing as I'm in it, right? Even more. Sharing in a way that this is just what's happening, not that it's a big, traumatic or vulnerable thing, but it's actually part of how we learn and grow as humans. The more of us that are willing to transform out loud, the less judgment there is on the planet. One of the reasons retreats are so amazingly powerful is because in the container, we can transform out loud because there's a safety created, right? There's confidentiality. There are certain agreements. Every retreat leader does it a little bit differently, but agreements about being coachable and how to receive and give coaching and how to interact with one another, the energy container of the room. And in that space, people feel safe to share. And when we share and we're seen and we're witnessed, we heal and we grow. One of my favorite quotes is by Kurt Wright. And he says, as a human being, we cannot accept a part of ourselves that we haven't shared with another human being and had validated rather than violated. Now, I want you to think about that when it comes to transforming out loud, right? When we make a mistake, when we do something we're not proud of, or when something happens in our life, and sometimes when we're conscious, when something happens in our life, we think, I must have attracted this. And we see it as a, what is the word I'm looking for? Like a problem, like something wrong with us, right? Well, if I were more conscious, I wouldn't have attracted this. Maybe there's just some more healing to do, right? I remember I injured my shoulder a few years ago. I fell on the stairs and I dislocated my shoulder and I tore my rotator cuff. And I was like writing on flip charts and I could only lift my arm so high. And I was really embarrassed. And now there was lots of spiritual lesson in this, right? Shouldering burdens. This is the masculine side, right? I had lots of memories come up to heal related to this pain in my shoulder. So it was a transformational experience, and it was showing me places where I was out of alignment. It was a mirror for me, right? And because I know that, I was really ashamed. And it's challenging even now to put that into words because it really doesn't make sense, right? Yet I could easily say, well, I fell, right? Big deal. But I know nothing, on the surface is what it seems, right? I knew there was more to it than that. And I knew it was telling me I had some growth to do. And in fact, it was also really inviting me to own more of my healing gifts. I'm a healer. I'm a physical healer, and a spiritual healer, an emotional healer. And the process of working with healers for my shoulder was inviting me to own more of those gifts and use them more and more in the way I lead retreats and the way I do my sessions. Actually, I do a healing session now. So there were all kinds of gifts in this, but I was embarrassed, right? And it was obvious, right? Like people could see it. And even though I was getting the lessons and loving it, there was this part of me that was feeling shame. Like if I were more conscious, I wouldn't have needed this lesson to get here. And we need to get away from that. And in the spiritual community, that can be really common, right? I know for me, whenever something comes up for me physically, I always inquire into what's the emotional component and in what way is this showing me that I may be out of alignment. So yes, that's true, right? And it doesn't have to create shame. And that's my goal. That's my goal with bringing forward this idea of transforming out loud. Where can you transform out loud this week? What could you share in your business, in your personal life? Where could you be more truthful about how you're feeling, about what you desire, about what's really true for you? And I just invite you to share once in one way that feels risky this week. And see what happens. See what opens up for you. At worst, you see that you don't die by transforming out loud, by sharing what's going on for you. And do it with the commitment of creating a world where we can share what's really, really true for us without the judgment, right? With just support for our transformation. Because in order to transform, we must see a new truth. And in order to see the new truth, we must surrender to what's happening with us. And if we feel shame, there's no freedom to surrender and see and own that new truth. And then we don't change, right? And it's the same thing year after year after year. So I'm inviting you today to transform out loud. I am also inviting you to share with me if there are any guests that you recommend that you'd like me to interview specifically for the Transform Out Loud series that I'll be doing in 2019. This is people who have stories of stuff that maybe happened in their world that normally could be associated with shame or tragedy or trauma, but it actually invited them to grow. I'm going to do a series on that in the new year. So please email support@alignedentrepreneurs.com and let us know if you have that. Second, I am in the midst of offering what is called the Entrepreneur's Alignment Tune-Up. And this is really becoming more and more aware of our own alignment so we don't create these things, right, that force us to transform out loud in ways that are uncomfortable. It's called the Entrepreneur's Alignment Tune-Up. It's a 5-day free video training. And it starts today, actually. The first video went out today. So you can still get that at alignedentrepreneurs.com/tune-up. This is Darla LeDoux with Aligned Entrepreneurs. I will be on hiatus until mid-January with the podcast, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Retreat and Grow Rich, the podcast. If so, please share your experience and spread the word. Also, please subscribe over on iTunes and leave us a fabulous review. It makes a big difference in helping to get the word out. And you can join me in my mission to normalize transformation on the planet, one intimate retreat at a time. You can find show notes from this and all of our episodes over at alignedentrepreneurs.com/podcast. If you'd like to understand the inner workings of my retreat-based business model and build your confidence in your retreat dreams, you can grab my book, Retreat and Grow Rich, over on Amazon. If you're just beginning to explore incorporating small retreats into your business model, or you've been hosting retreats for years, but they're just not as lucrative as you'd like them to be, hop on over to retreatrevenueroadmap.com. Here you'll find a fabulous free gift. It's an extensive ebook that walks you through the 3 core types of retreats and how to use them in your business model to make great money and make a big impact. In each of these retreats, I'll let you know where to host them, what to include, where they fit in your business model, and the ever mysterious what do you charge. You can find that at retreatrevenueroadmap.com.